Whatever happened before in other timelines of you will never repeat itself. And on the other hand, everything is fixed. So no matter what you do, things always turn out the way they are supposed to turn out. So I even question free will at this point, seeing it as an illusion. Yes, that's something I can't understand fully, how much is fixed and how much is not. Simple. Everything is completely static and fixed, but the everything is complex. So even when you make a choice, being what you think is unpredictable, you are changing nothing at all. You are only thinking it is different, but it is still exactly what was going to happen anyway. And if you go to the past to alter it, you come to understand that that in itself is also fixed and part of the whole matrix of reality. And even the events you try to alter, you soon find out that the very things you do, your effort to change those things you want to alter, actually is what causes them to happen in the first place. So free will is an illusion. You are under the illusion that you have a choice because you do not remember what is going to happen next. So you are only watching the movie unfold in front of you, the movie of your life. You said you are only thinking it is different, but it is still exactly what was going to happen anyway. Why is it something that was going to happen anyway, since there are millions of alternatives, so all of them are happening at once? So what exactly is it that is supposed to happen? There is no such a thing as I see it. You think you have a choice, but that's only because you are not aware of what is going to happen next. But what happens next, there are millions of variants of that, and in that there is a free will to choose, no? Exactly. But they are not alternatives. You only think they are alternatives in the limited, very limited view of your consciousness awareness. Yes, because from the highest level, it's all worked out anyway, yes? I think we covered this in some video. The moment you acquire more awareness, you see that it is all connected and that you in fact had no choice. You are only looking at small part of a fixed reality, so your choices are always limited to a fixed, prearranged range of perception, like an elephant in the dark, and you looking at it with a small flashlight. You see parts of the elephant, and you see the differences between the parts. That's your awareness. But it is still an elephant all the time, and you cannot change that. That's the illusion of having free will, a choice. Because from a limited perspective of a soul, as a fragment of a larger soul reality, source, you do have unlimited amount of choices, but only from your limited perception, because your perception is limited. But as you grow in awareness of the absolute, the everything, then you start to see that you indeed had no choice, that everything you did before, your choices, were all you could do in that given time or moment. Always according to a pre-planned, fixed reality. Pre-planned by whom? You? Then the highest I pre-plans millions of timelines at the same time and choices? Even the chaos of Earth today is caused by the very people who are living it, because it is always them and them again making the same mistakes, and they had no choice because of their very limited understanding. From the perception of a limited soul with limited perception, you do have unlimited choices and possibilities. You think it's aleatory, but it isn't. When you step back and see the bigger picture, you see that there never were multiple timelines, nor were there multiple choices. It was only one. What do you mean, one? Words do not suffice to convey this. If you get to a road and you see a bifurcation, you think you have a choice to go right or left. So you choose, say, right. And you think you could have chosen left. But everything before you and everything in front of you caused you to choose right. And you could have only have chosen right. Even if you stop and go back and then turn left, it's still an illusion. But there is another me somewhere out there choosing left and having different life experiences leading up to the left, right? In a way, yes. From a limited perspective, but not from a more expanded one. There are no timelines from above. It is only one. I must go now. They are calling me. Holy moly, this needs so much more explanation then. I did not express this correctly. Do you want to continue tomorrow earlier? You did, just not the fullness of it yet. Yes, sure. Thank you. Welcome. Next day. Humans tend to think they know it all, always, and they get attached to ideas, and they make them theirs as if they were objects. And if you give them a new idea, it's like you are taking that dear object away from them. The people who think they are advanced and in spirituality, ETs, and all that, have been programmed by one another to understand timelines as a separate thing from them. Things like a train track they are on and can be moved into another. Hence the concepts of positive timeline and negative timeline. But things aren't so simple. As I have described before, whatever each person is perceiving and according to her awareness level of perception is by right and technically a timeline of its own. And the choices each person making each timeline produce an array of added occurrences that make them understand time as something moving from the past to the present and then to the future. So as I have described before, timelines as a set of fixed lines with a fixed set of events in progression in each one of them, and each consciousness jumping from perceiving whatever happens in one line to whatever happens in the next one, being that the more dramatic the change of events in one, the longer the jump into another line that differs more from the original one. Hence the term quantum jump. Being or understanding that the lines that are closest together as the most similar among each other, and the more they are apart, the more they differ. This is still a crude analogy using lines, but I had to use something to describe it all. Now, moving along to another subject that converts into this one. History. It is said that history is a set list of events in a chronological order. But history was written by the victors and the people in power, always. And if you notice, it is only a recollection of battle after battle, with little to no relevant alternative subjects, or only as a secondary reference. But besides the fact that history, as it has been presented to humans, does not reflect what really happened in the past, we must face another problem that becomes evident only to those who have time traveled a lot. There isn't only one past. There are countless pasts with countless events that also differ from each other, from slightly different to very different. So that's what people call timelines, collective timelines. But they are still looking at them as separate things that hardly, if ever, interfere with one another. This is definitely not so. All events in all so-called timelines are as relevant to a present point in time we call now, from the perspective of the person consciousness perceiving it all. Meaning that there is no single past, that countless and countless events that are different, all are relevant, and all form what any person consciousness calls the present from its point of view. In my mind's eye, coming back to the parallel line example I have previously used, I see countless, in the billions and more, timelines converging into one single point where they all touch, like a black hole bending everything into it, all into one single point. Point that is moving along at its own rate, speed, and intention. And all the previous timelines converging into it form what it is as a time singularity point. And in turn, again, the same countless billions of timelines represented as parallel lines in a graph come out of that singularity point and disperse in front of it in what you could call the future. But it is not really, making our graph progress in conceptual development into a vortex that concentrates all events and series of related events called timelines into itself in the middle, exactly like a black hole. But then, this image is not right either, as it represents a flat surface above. It should be a sphere. A three-dimensional hole is a sphere. That's a two-dimensional hole in the image. So everything is coming out of that singularity point that is in fact creating it all. It is formed by the choices and the data it has perceived in its past as a personal perception, and with that it perceives the ever-elusive present and forms the possibilities of choice to form what it would call its future. That singularity point is a person consciousness, a person, sentient being, knowing it exists. It may not know anything. The secrets of the universe escape from it. But all it does know is that it exists. And from that limited point of view, it creates it all. The past, its past no longer exists, as its future does not as well. One is non-existent as the other. To believe in one's past as something inescapable and impossible to change is as unreal as to think that the future is also as set in stone. Both are malleable. Both are as uncertain as the other, as they are one. The only thing that defines one from the other is an idea in the subject's mind. This point above is perfectly valid from the point of view of someone, a consciousness, having an experience, perceiving a sequence of events he or she calls time. So from this point of view, there is free will. So much free will that you can also change your past. And you can, as much as you can, decide for your future what it is going to be. And everyone should, in order to advance as consciousnesses and as people. Change the perception and the meaning of each one's past, removing the unwanted events and replacing them with ones with a more convenient and positive meaning. But from another point of view, the more expanded one, as everything converges into one point, be it past or future, point we call the present, and that present is and can only be generated by a conscious observer, then everything is fixed, and the observer is only playing back what is already there. But as you have infinite choices, even if they are all fixed, that would mean or would be equivalent to having complete utter free will, and valid as described above. But it is here where things get more complicated. Because, as I mentioned above, timelines are really not separate sequences of events. A subject jumps from one to another to create a personal story, personal timeline of events. All events we could call from different timelines, both the closer ones and most similar to the further ones and more different, all interfere with one another all the time. An event in what we could call another timeline shapes the events in this one perceived and in all others, and vice versa. So all events we call aleatory, without explanation, freaky, or more commonly taken as life, as things that just happen, and we all take for granted that they all must have a logical cause, have their cause and roots in another set of timelines. They all converge. All the events in all timelines converge into one single spot, as described above. So, in block, all together, they are forming one massive single timeline. So massive, it encompasses the absolute, the everything. And that would necessarily mean it cannot only flow in one perceived direction. Hence, my former description of time as an ever-expanding and contracting sphere made up of countless billions upon billions of timelines. Meaning, time flows in all directions and reversed as well, and that is equal to stillness, to no time at all. From that more expanded point of view, everything is set in stone. When you have a limited awareness, as we all have, we can only see a limited set of things, events. But as your awareness grows, you begin to see more and more things that were always there, but you did not have the awareness necessary to perceive them. Not only we begin to see them, but we begin to understand the co-relationship between them all, the cause and the effect between them that causes what we call an event. So what was previously unknown suddenly becomes explainable, logical, and therefore known. And that amounts to perceiving several timelines as one. Several timelines that before were perceived as separate ones, with little to nothing to do with one another. So, as you go advancing in your consciousness perception, your awareness of everything grows and grows. And that, as described before, means you can process more and more data, not as an empty memorization. We expand our consciousness and form our soul and mind to the degree that we then create or manifest what we call the world we live in. And that is in turn what we call a density of existence. As we grow in perception of multiple timelines, we create for ourselves our personal timeline. The more expanded our comprehension and awareness in general, the larger the timeline will be. Larger because it includes more things, more data in it. We create from there a personal world according to our applied knowledge through our perception and awareness. We suddenly become more and more conscious of all the events that correlate to create another. So mysteries are explained, for example. But this also means that other people in a lower state of data processing in awareness, called a lower density, cannot understand us as we do them, as their perception is fully understood by us, but us not by them, as we are so much more expanded in awareness. So what once were separate timelines suddenly become one for us. That's why we can explain the formerly unexplained. But this process never ends. As we grow in data processing awareness, we go splicing together formerly separate timelines to form one, the one we see ours. This process is also akin to forming and making our own soul as we go along. But we get to the point where we can see, process, and understand so many timelines as compared to the point of view of another set of people awareness consciousnesses, that we can see that from that more expanded perspective and observing the lesser evolved consciousnesses, we can see that from this point of view, The future is as set in stone as the past, because the options in front are very limited, so much it converts into one. But then you turn to see yourself, and you know that you are in the same circumstances than the ones you called from your point of view lesser evolved consciousnesses. And you realize that in this case, as below, so is above. And you have a lot of work to do expanding your personal awareness, perception, and soul. What is time? It is an inescapable part of you. It is you. You cannot have awareness of self without some sort of temporal perception. Me, not me. I have a thought. I did not before. You feel that you cannot control time, but that's an illusion, because you do not know yourself enough. You are stuck in a set of ideas, like time flowing forwards, as referenced to what? To external things. But then again, that's in your head, and there alone. Time as something uncontrollable is spawned from whatever parts of you that you are not fully or not aware of. This means time is spawned from your unconscious, and your unconscious makes up the vast most part of whatever you are. But understanding yourself more and more, incorporating everything as you, understanding why you react the way you do, with no judgment and with judgment as well, all inclusive, exposing your shadows, your darkest side, will make you more and more aware of how time is made and comes from you. What you think and how you think, the meaning you give to your thoughts, defines time for you. So the more you know yourself, the more you control your time, because you are time, and time is you. Thanks. Wow. Okay. I must say I must read this many more times and contemplate it to understand more, as it's a new angle. I have several questions that I wrote down. Okay, first question that I need to understand. You said there are countless timelines, all converging into one. But is there a separate I physically in each one of them, or how? I am referring to I as Gosha, not the I from the expanded view. From the expanded view, there is just one I. As with many things I have described, yes, there is a different you in each timeline, because you are doing different things in each one of them, from the slightly different to the utterly extremely different. So that amounts to being another you entirely, as you are having another different set of experiences. And as I have described somewhere else, that different set of experiences defines you as another soul. Yet, they all converge. All those yous converge into one. You, the one reading this. They all define you, and all the experiences they have had and are having and will have converge into you as the black hole you are. You are a density. You are a universe. You are the absolute. Everything else, especially what you call other people, are just you in another timeline, that differs from the one you perceive as yours. Differs to the point where you see them as different people, genders, looks, but they are just more of you, and you define them as they all define you. That's why we are all connected. That's why we are all one. In a very real way. Some are more expanded in awareness than other yous, therefore creating what you call a higher me, higher self. But that again is only a concept that is limited to one or another point of view. So both things are correct. There are other yous in other perceived timelines. And there is no other you in any other timelines, because you are also the sum of them all, forming a higher you, a unified field you, the absolute. Therefore, you are all that exists, and then there are no others, and cannot be any others in any other so-called timeline, because you have unified them all in your consciousness, awareness, perception. Therefore, density of existence. That would be very high up. Why all of them converge into me that is reading this, and not me that is reading this converging into some other Gosha elsewhere not reading this but cooking? From her point of view, they converge into her. From yours, they converge in you. But as they are all you, you create a unified field, a singularity, where no matter what you is aware of this all, it is always still you. Therefore, all converging into you and you alone. Each consciousness is the singularity. Each sentient being. They are it. They all are one. Each one is creating its own universe and the ultimate universe. All connected, all being one. What are different people? They are all ideas created by themselves, by the one. You are the one, the unified field. We are standing waves and idea. That's what we all are. We are all one idea we had. Yes, okay. Now, you said, it all comes out of one singularity point, consciousness of a person, but then it also converges into one. So it comes out of one and converges into one. There's nothing but oneness on both ends then. It is all ideas. They are all ideas. The idea that something was past will make it converge one way. The idea that something is in the future will converge in another way, and all the variants in the middle. In the end, this line analogy is a linear graphic attempt to illustrate something inillustratable, simply expressed. Everything, past, present, and future, are ideas being generated by consciousness awareness, that is you. Understood. Now, this question, you said it's all malleable, even the so-called past. The events are all malleable. Then, why is the free will the illusion if the events are malleable by the consciousness observer? Because from the higher level up, still that too is established, each choice? From one point of view, from the lower points of view, there is free will. But as you expand in your awareness, you begin to understand that you could have only acted the way you acted, because as your awareness expands, you realize why you have lesser and lesser choices from one or another particular situation you are proceeding from. Why lesser and lesser? Why you could have acted only in that way? Because from a lesser point of awareness, you see many choices, free will, and you think that you can change things. And it becomes even clearer when you time travel and attempt to change events in the past to alter the future. But then you realize that the very act of you going to the past to change those unwanted events is what caused them to happen in the first place. This means that even before you had the idea of time traveling to alter an unwanted past, that was already done. You had already traveled to the past to alter the event, but as a consequence of that, it happened. So you try to change it again in a more complex way, and you only realize that whatever you do, that too caused the events that lead to the formation of the first unwanted event in the first place. You are simply not capable of perceiving the connection between all the events leading to one or another. That's the process I describe as augmenting awareness in order to unify what we formerly perceived as different timelines, making them all converge into one, the one we currently perceive. Yes, but you said before that changing those events in the past, time traveling, doesn't affect the timeline you came from, that one remained untouched. That's what I still don't understand. You don't go and change the past, as things from that point of view are quite fixed. But you can change your past from the point you are in now, as in your current perception and understanding of the why of things. But even time traveling and changing the past means you still hold that illusion, because even if you stop some unwanted event, you are only looking at its mirror event, happened versus did not happen, as anything that is creates its opposite. So even where you look now as in something you changed and thanks to you did not happen, you are only looking at another set of events, timeline, that is also affecting and defining the one where the unwanted event did in fact take place. In short, you did nothing, because even changing an event will define the event itself from another point of view, and both timelines define and create each other. Therefore, it's fixed. As a common problem I face when I explain things like these, some concepts are valid from one level and point of view, but not from another. But at the same exact time, both end up defining each other. Yes, I know. Okay, I still don't understand this. Let's go to the very down to the earth level. Example of someone who has a choice of, let's say, going to school in one city A or moving to another city B for a totally different reason. She chooses B. Why, according to this, going to the city B is the only thing she could have done, if as easily she could have chosen the other path, as viewed from her perspective. But her free will took her to the city B, or not. What made her decide going to the city B? And why was it the only thing she could have done? Because she had a choice, and each one defines each other, and the other, her, is passing along information to another at the quantum level, defining each timeline. And yes, as seen from above, all events converge into her not having any other choice but to be doing what she is doing exactly. But this from the point of view of herself now, in the city B, as is for the other one who went to school in the city A. They all pass the information to one another, not only those two, but countless billions of others as well, forming what she calls herself. What types of information? Perception, experience of the kind that goes defining a soul. What forms a soul? Wait, so from the point of view of herself in the city A, if she chose that, that too was the only option she could have done? Yes. Then, wait a second. Then we have millions of free choice decisions at the end, even though all of them are the only ones we could have taken for ourselves. From one level, yes, but only because you are not aware of other things that converge to create what you call reality. The minute you know, then you unite those timelines as one. And we all do that all the time as we go expanding our awareness. It's a complicated subject for me to understand. I mean, she went to the city B. She could have gone to school, city A. Why was coming here the only thing she could have done? I still don't get it. From one level, she could have done many things, but she did a specific one of them. Why? Why that one? Because all the others converged into forming that one as the only possible outcome due to the added circumstances of all the others together, because they are not isolated. They are all interfering and creating one another. So from above, seeing all the choices and timelines, she could have only done what she did. But she still could have gone to school city A. That could have means that that option was open to take. Yes, but she did not. But could have? You could have been struck by a meteorite, but you have not. The fact that you see one as more probable than the other is only due to the ideas you hold in your head. But the fact that something happens this way and not the other doesn't mean that the other couldn't have happened, and that it was not the option, right? But there was a very specific set of reasons why those did not happen. Okay. And last question I have for now is this. You said all timelines overlap and information is passed, etc. So strange happenings like people manifesting strange occurrences that seem quite miraculous could have something to do with events in another timeline? Yes, because all the information in all timelines are only one bulk with no present, no past, no future. So the information comes across only by frequency match, at will, by perception. So, as seen in history, many different things that happened in the past, say 2000 years ago, from totally different timelines, all converge into one point we call the now. But the now, as seen from the point of view of one consciousness observer. So if King Edward II back in the day slipped and broke his leg, and in another he did not, they all affect the now with the same intensity. So even battles in history, where in one timeline it had one outcome and in another timeline it had another outcome, they both affect the now in the same manner and intensity, defining the now, the point of awareness and consciousness, singularity. So there is no one past, no correct and incorrect past, only being incorrect from one or another very specific point of view. All possibilities always exist all the time, and they all interfere and define one another, causing one another. Okay, I understand. Still need to contemplate. Are you tired? No. You have been writing for a while, no? When I'm writing English, I can go further and faster. Okay, well, it's quite fascinating, this subject, and how you perceive it from that high expanded level. It's definitely a new angle. For example, to travel to the past, to stop one specific scientist from getting hit by a bus, therefore creating a spiral of negative events that lead to, say, a world war. So you go to the point in time, like 3 minutes before he was to cross that street where he was hit by a bus, and then you stop him and ask him for directions, therefore altering the synchronicity necessary to be hit by the bus. But then you go happy, thinking it's mission accomplished, only to hear the thump of the scientist being hit by the bus. Your stopping him to ask for directions caused the delay that caused him to be hit by the bus. Then you go back a second time and you delay him even more, just to make him get anxious because he is late for work, making him rush again through the street to be hit by the same bus, again causing the very event you wanted to stop. But you didn't really cause it. It was supposed to happen anyway in the first place. Otherwise, there wouldn't be you trying to stop it from happening. This is oversimplified, but it can get extremely complex, where your added and repeated attempts to stop him from being hit by a bus only creates more spirals with the same result. And in that case, all I could have done is to go there to attempt to stop that event. Explain, please, what you mean that when you go back, you cause it. How is it causing it? You perhaps altered its happening a bit, but it was still happening even without you in it. You want to stop an event, so you plot a mission to time travel to stop the event of the scientist being hit by a bus. But you did not realize that the reason why he was hit by the bus is because you already were there, trying to stop it, even before you left for the mission in the first place. Because everything is interconnected and spirals in complexity. And the more you are aware of the complexity of the why things occur, the more you understand why it is not so simple to change the past. Okay, what a mishmash of the reality we got ourselves. One question. Why create the illusion of free will for our lower selves? What does the higher self gain from it? You said above, we are not aware of not having a free will because we simply don't remember what happens next. Then why design it this way? More than why, I would say that the illusion of free will spawns out of our ignoring how things work and what will come next. As when you watch a movie for the first time, you have no idea what will happen in the movie. So all the possibilities and all the choices the actors have are possible for you that is watching. But from a more expanded point of view, the movie is fixed. The events are already set in place, already filmed. It's only you who does not know the plot and the end. So you think there is free will in the movie because you do not know what the characters are going to do. But when you watch the movie for the second time, then you see there is no free will and things are already set in place. But then it is only your personal point of view and awareness perception that determines if there will be or not any perceived free will in the movie. I do need to clarify how the manifestation comes into play with all this though, and the fact that we are creators of the reality. From what level are we the creators then? How are we manifesting then really? How does that tie in here? Manifestation is to bring one possibility towards you using frequency match. Valid from a lower point of view, but from a more expanded one, that whatever you manifested would be only the logical consequence of all what precedes that event. Okay, so in that sense, we do have the game field open then. By adjusting the frequencies, choosing to be certain frequencies, being those frequencies, we bring into ourselves a certain possibility and not the other. And going back to the point above, that it spawns from us ignoring how things work. Why do we then? Why was that written into the system of things, the ignorance? There is only one. There is only source. Source is all there is, and impossible to imagine or to define oneness. It means that everything that can be is, and already is, outside of time and outside of space. So everything that is already exists. All possibilities are, and just are. The reason oneness, source, fragmented itself into countless holographic parts, all containing all what defines the whole, holographic fragments of source called souls. But the only way to fragment source, that is all-knowing, because knowing is consciousness as well, and everything is consciousness, then to be a fragment, although you still are oneness, you do not remember it all, know it all, because if you did, then you would be source. So what defines a soul, a fragment of source, is not remembering it all, not understanding it all. But you still are source, and your energy, what defines you is to know it all. So that's all a soul wants to do. To expand, to look for the way home, to look for the way to remember it all, to be source in full again. And you said, Gosha, so in that sense, we do have the game field open then. Yes, as fragments of source. And even though everything is fixed, in our limited experience, we do have the full illusion of free will, but only as explained by my movie analogy. In that sense, we are creators. But we are not creating anything. because it is already created. But at the same time, it's not like things are already created. We are those things. We are that we think we create. We are not creating things, concepts, or ideas. It is us what we create, and everything else comes out of us. We are what we create. I still believe it's a bit different from the movie, because the movie, it wasn't us who produced it or created it. And with our life circumstances, it's all us, from different levels, but still us. No, it was you who created it, as you created for yourself everything else, even the stars above. Because it is you, with your consciousness awareness, with your perception, ethics, and values, who is interpreting that movie in your own unique way. So it is you who is creating the experience of watching that movie, and everything is experience. I didn't create those actors in the movie. Hollywood did. Even the actors, the director and the producer, is only you again in another timeline, under other circumstances. But I know that's only valid from a higher perspective. Who holds the idea of what Hollywood is? Who interprets what happens in the movie, why it interests you or not? Same as you walking down the street. It's an experience, apparently not fully under your control. You did not create that sidewalk, that lamppost, that building, you say. But it is still you who is creating it all in your mind, giving sense to all that so-called potential energy. That's why you call it a building, because in your mind, you hold all the concepts that correlate that thing to a useful object of this or that quality and use. So nothing is really outside of you. It's all in your mind. You are creating all the universe as seen and interpreted by you. And that is as valid as how anyone else sees the universe. And they all share and correlate and alter and influence one another, more and more, until oneness is reached again. Yes. And last question, last that I seem to have for now. Apart from their minds being expanded with these concepts, how can people apply this knowledge so it benefits their immediate reality more? Like what you said, for example, about mysterious events happening, how it's all coming and overlapping among different timelines. They can begin to understand those events in a different light now. What other practical lesson can we give them from this? To expand is all a soul wants to do. To understand the why of everything. Remove that from a soul and you are left with an empty shell. To be able to find something practical in the real world with this or not depends on the level of awareness of each listener. As I would say, this is the core of what matters and all that matters. Because as you grow in consciousness awareness, you understand more and more about everything. And with that, you automatically will know how to alter your reality in your favor. Not even as a know-how, it comes automatically with the knowledge. So, the practical, this is the reason why we should all expand and know more about everything. Ultimately, it will give you power over time and matter, and even over death itself.